Are record companies taking advantage of people? Is the music industry built on this underbelly of major, huge corporations taking advantage of small artists and robbing them of all their rights? I'm going to attempt to answer that on this video.
Indie Jones, back with a trendy flow. I'm still trying to find my voice in this hip scenario. Here we go.
Yo, what's going on? My name is Ruslan. I'm an independent hip-hop artist, entrepreneur, and this is a question that I've been asked recently. I did a video a few days ago talking about value and avoiding a toxic way of thinking, and I've probably evolved on my position on this idea of record companies taking advantage of people. Should an artist sign with a major record company or an indie record company? I've been around the music business and the business of making music for a little over 10 years now. I've seen some level of success. I do this full time. I've been a full-time entrepreneur for 3 years off of music and music-related revenue streams. And I think this is a touchy subject for a lot of different people. Now, for starters, I think we first have to define what kind of record companies are we talking about, and two, what are standard artist deals. So there's independent record companies, which function much different than major record companies, and they're usually smaller operations with no or less budgets, and they have access to very specific and focused niched audiences. I run a boutique mom and pop label called King Stream Entertainment, and that's kind of how we do things. And those types of situations are much different. Those are usually more like 50-50 profit shares, where they have artists retain their publishing and have way more flexibility in how their music is done. Now, when most people think of major label, major record companies, there's four conglomerates that everything falls under. There is Universal, which oversees Interscope and Capitol and Republic, and then there's the Warner umbrella, which oversees Atlantic and Warner Brothers Music. And then there is Sony, which oversees RCA, Epic Records, Columbia Records. And I believe those are the three major. There used to be four, but I think there's just three now. And the way those labels structure their deals is they get a majority of the lion's share profit of an artist, meaning that when you sign a record contract, you're looking at a rate of 10 to 20%, maybe 25-30% if you have a lot of leverage, but 10 to 20% is kind of like a standard entry level deal, meaning that you're coming through the door, they're going to flip the bill for everything. So you're going to get an advance against future royalties. That is not a signing bonus. That is just an advance against future revenue made. Depending on the type of deal, depending on how big the label is, that could be around 100 grand. And if you have a gang of leverage and a gang of momentum, you could get up into 7 figures. And they're going to get a recording budget, a marketing budget, all these different budgets, and basically get access to some of their relationships and some of their resources. So the way many people make the shift is that they're thinking, okay, well, I'm going to go through this door and I'm going to get paid, and now I'm on and I've made it and I'm successful. But that's not the truth. Getting signed for a lot of artists to a major label is just the first step. So what can happen is you're signed to this major label and you get some money up front, but then you're one of 150 artists sitting. What's going to distinguish you from that situation? And mind you, it takes a lot of work just to get to that level, to get to a place where you're on a major label's radar. It takes a ton of time. So the question is are they taking advantage of people because they're flipping the bill and you are losing 90% of your revenue stream from the sale and streams of your music, and they're probably going to get you for a 360, which means they're going to take a percentage of your show money, of your merch money, of endorsements, of publishing. Is that taking advantage of artists? Well, it depends. It depends on what value is attached to that label. It depends on how entrepreneurial you are and where your mind state is. If you think that you just getting signed and that's it, you've made it, you're wrong. If you go in through the door and you say, okay, I'm going to make a calculated decision. I essentially want to get paid on the front end, meaning instead of making my money on the back end of my streaming checks or my TuneCore checks or my DistroKid checks by being indie, I just want to get my 100 grand up front. and I want to have the luxury of going into nicer studios, working with bigger producers, shooting nicer videos. Is that value to you worth 85% of your back-end revenue streams? Back in the day, most labels signed artists for really crappy deals. Meaning even the indie artists I knew were saying, man, look, I'm gonna sign this deal to an indie label and I'm not even expecting to make any money off the back end. I'm just gonna get my music out there. I'm gonna get my music in stores. I'm gonna get a box of CDs that I could flip and sell at shows, and I'm gonna go make my music on the road. That used to be the old school philosophy of how folks approach labels. Is the value of them giving you that much money up front and giving you a bigger platform worth you losing 85% of the back end revenue stream? I don't know. For me, no, but I'm Mr. Indie Jones. Another way to look at it is, do you want to own 10 to 15% of something that's generating $1 million? Or do you want to own 100% of something that's generating $200,000 in 2 years? That's a question that every artist has to deal with and has to gauge their own personal capacity and their own ability to work and grind. But the work and grind is the part that we can't ignore, meaning that to build an independent business to the place of you're making 250 grand a year independently is the same amount of energy that it's going to require for an artist to sign to a major label and to make waves and actually leverage that onto a bigger platform. Just being signed isn't going to necessarily do it for you. And so I think you gotta ask yourself, and what we know for a fact is like 100% of nothing isn't worth anything, right? So if you're an independent artist, you're just starting out, and an indie label wants to partner with you and sign you to something, and you're not making any money yet, well, what's the hurt in giving up half in order to start finally making money for the first time? And that's another thing we got to factor in. So I think you just got to count the cost on what is valuable. So are major labels taking advantage of people? I would refer back to my homegirl Wendy Day. She wrote an amazing book. It's called How to Get a Record Deal. You guys should check it out. There's a second installment of it. I'll link it in the description below. And Wendy Day basically gives you all the steps on how to get a record deal and how to get on a major label's radar, while breaking it down in a way that you don't need a major label. And I think that's ultimately where every artist wants to be. You want to build enough momentum and enough buzz where you have a platform of your own that you own, that you're not waiting for nobody to put you on, that you're creating videos and you're creating messaging and you're creating music and you're creating a story that's your own. And then when a label comes alongside of you, they can fan the flame and make you even bigger. So it all depends on what the cost is to you. It all depends on how you want your money. Do you want to get paid on the front end and give up some of the percentage and some of the ownership, or do you want to get paid on the back end? There is no right or wrong in terms of that side of things. Again, for me, I'm looking to build as much momentum and to generate as much revenue as possible so that I can get the ideal situation of a partnership with a major label or someone on a bigger scale that can cash flow and advance some of the money, but we get to control and release and own the masters. And ownership for me is important because I'm an indie artist, I'm naturally an entrepreneur, and that's what I'm looking to value. But that's not the case for everybody. So I think every artist has to count the cost, figure out what they value, figure out what's important to them, figure out what's the best decision for their family, and make decisions based on that. I could do more videos about this, follow up a little deeper, but I'm curious what questions you guys have. I think artists aren't naturally good at business, and so they're probably relinquishing more than they should. And that's why this channel exists, is to help you take something that appears complex like storytelling and marketing and building a career in music and entertainment, and to simplify it in a way where, first of all, your mental state is right and you understand how to build your career and build momentum, and second of all, to go and execute and demystify the idea of marketing and the idea of business in a way that's simple. So hopefully this video was helpful. Again, check out Wendy Day's book, How to Get a Record Deal. Super dope. I've mentioned it on his channel before. And I think you just got to know what the cost is for you. Got to know what your goals are. If I'm a new artist, if I'm a young artist, I'm not thinking about a record deal. Maybe an independent situation if someone has access to a niche market. But I'm strictly thinking about how can I build my audience and develop a cult following that can ride with me. So thank y'all for checking out this video, man. Leave a comment, share this with somebody. Let me know if you want me to go deeper and further on this. I know I brushed over some things like masters and publishing. It's a whole lot to get into, but I'm curious to hear from you guys. Thank you so much. Peace.
I am so incognito, far away from him, incognito, came in one way, incognito, not leaving the same. I'm going with the top down, waiting for the countdown, all grace, no wishes, no loans, no interest, feels good, Tony,
running late here unannounced. Nothing worse than a game with no crown. And I don't fit in to pretend that you blend like a front out of town. God stepped in and said, oh, the account. Now you don't know what to do with the pounds. Take a view of the house, make it true till it's ours. I'm producing amounts, it's a nuisance, the house.
I am so
Ouch.